So, if a major car manufacturer sold a vehicle that, failed to start 52% of the time,
Right.
the government would shut them down by Friday.
Hmm.
Like, consumer protection agencies would absolutely swarm the headquarters.
Oh, yeah. Executives would be subpoenaed for congressional hearings.
Yep.
100%.
Exactly. And the product would be recalled worldwide. But what if I told you that we tolerate that exact same failure rate for a product that costs $80,000?
And not only do we tolerate it, we actually actively pressure 18-year-olds to buy it.
Yeah, we do.
We basically tell them it's like the most morally responsible, safe choice they could possibly make for their entire future.
It's wild. So welcome to today's deep dive. I'm really thrilled you're here listening with us. Today, we are looking at a stack of research that honestly takes a sledgehammer to how we traditionally view the modern American higher education system.
It really does. It's a completely different lens.
Yeah. The author of our source material really comes out swinging. They argue that if you strip away all the ivy-covered brick walls, the marching bands, the prestige...
Romance of it all.
Right, the romance. If you strip that away and look at the university degree economy strictly as a business model, well, it might just be the most flawlessly constructed and ruthless profit machine ever built.
It's a really jarring perspective shift, for anyone, because we are so heavily conditioned to see higher education as this pure public good.
Yeah, the great equalizer.
Exactly. But this analysis asks us to look past that and examine the actual gears, the levers, and the economic machinery operating underneath it all.
And just to be clear up front for everyone listening, we aren't here to bash universities or take sides on the politics of student debt.
No, not at all.
The source material we're dissecting today is highly critical, obviously, and yet pretty controversial.
Yeah.
But the structural mechanics they outline are just so incredibly fascinating that we just have to pull them apart and look at how they work.
Yeah, we're basically exploring the architecture of the argument here, looking at it purely through the lens of supply, demand, and risk.
Right. Impartially just unpacking the claims. Because the architecture they describe is, well, it's brilliant in its efficiency. So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with demand.
The foundation of any business.
Exactly. If you're going to sell a wildly expensive product, you need people to be absolutely desperate for it. Like, you need guaranteed demand.
You do.
And the author calls the first step of this model the unwritten rule.
Yeah, so let's look at the data the source brings up here. It shows that only about 1 in 5 job postings explicitly requires a 4-year degree. Just 20%.
Wait, only 20%?
Just 20% explicitly write it down.
Which, that sounds amazing on paper. You look at those numbers and you think, okay, 80% of the market is completely open to anyone with the right skills, regardless of their academic background.
It sounds great, but the author points out that this is basically an illusion. And it all comes down to how modern corporate hiring actually works mechanically.
Okay, how so?
Well, most medium and large companies use applicant tracking systems, commonly known as ATS.
Right, the automated software filters.
Exactly. So an HR department might not list a bachelor's degree in the job description because, maybe they want to cast a wide net, or perhaps they just want to look highly progressive and inclusive.
Okay, wait, hold on. So if the job description doesn't actually say degree required, how does the applicant get rejected for not having one?
Through the algorithm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, the hiring manager configures the ATS software to automatically filter out any resume that doesn't explicitly list a university degree.
So a human being never even sees it?
Never. Your resume goes straight into a digital black hole.
That's the ultimate plausible deniability. Because the requirement wasn't written down anywhere in the job description, there are no receipts. Like, you can't prove you were screened out for lacking a degree.
You can't prove a thing.
It reminds me of a trendy nightclub that claims they don't have a dress code because they want to look populist and welcoming to the masses.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right, but the bouncer at the door is still quietly turning away anyone who isn't wearing designer shoes. And they just tell you, oh, the club is at capacity.
That is a perfect analogy. And the reason companies rely on this invisible bouncer ties into something the source calls signaling theory.
Signaling theory. Okay, what's that?
Well, From a purely corporate perspective, the degree isn't necessarily about the specific facts a student learned in, say, a sophomore history class.
Right. They don't care if you know the dates of the French Revolution.
Exactly. It's a signal. It proves to an employer that an applicant has a high level of conscientiousness. It shows they can wake up on time, follow complex bureaucratic rules, meet arbitrary deadlines.
Basically endure 4 years of institutional friction without quitting.
Yes. The corporate world essentially uses the university as a massively expensive, outsourced HR screening tool.
Wait, hold on, though. I get the screening angle, I really do, but aren't universities actually teaching valuable skills? Like,
Yeah.
you can't tell me a mechanical engineering degree or a nursing degree is just a glorified HR filter for conscientiousness.
Oh, totally. That is a vital distinction, and the source definitely makes room for it.
Okay, good.
Hard sciences, medical fields, specialized engineering, those are absolutely direct skill training grounds. I mean, you definitely want a certified structural engineer building your bridges.
Yep.
But the vast majority of degrees issued are not in those hyper-specialized hard skill fields. For the broader general knowledge degree economy, the author argues the value is heavily, heavily weighted on that signaling aspect.
Okay, so the corporate world gets a free screening tool, but eventually the public catches on to the bouncer at the door, right?
Yeah.
Like, people realize the system is rigged.
Which brings in what the author calls the PR smokescreen.
Oh, I love this part.
When public pressure mounts, companies will issue these grand self-congratulatory press releases boasting about dropping the paper ceiling.
Yes, we have all seen those headlines, like Tech Giant X removes college degree requirement.
Exactly. They collect all the good press, they look incredibly egalitarian, and they become the hero of their own diversity slide in the boardroom.
But secretly, the ATS filters stay on.
They stay right on.
That is wild. They get the progressive optics while basically keeping the deadbolt locked.
Yeah.
You manufacture the absolute necessity of the product without ever having to publicly admit that you are enforcing it.
Right. So now you have artificially locked in the demand. The customer believes, correctly or not, that they will be completely locked out of the middle class without this product.
Which brings us to the next phase of the machinery, extracting the capital,
The financing.
financing the desperation. Because the product we are talking about isn't priced like a normal service. It is priced at, let's say, $80,000.
Give or take, yeah.
But unlike a house or a car, it is entirely intangible.
Right. It is an incredibly unique type of asset.
It's literally like taking out a mortgage on a ghost.
A mortgage on a ghost, yeah.
There is no physical collateral to repossess. You can't sell your English literature degree to a pawn shop if you fall on hard times.
You really can't.
Which makes the financing mechanics outlined in our source material absolutely wild. Like, we are talking about handing out massive loans to 18-year-olds on a Tuesday afternoon.
18-year-olds with zero credit history, zero income, and entirely bypassing the standard underwriting process.
I really want to pause on this, actually, because it is so normalized in our culture that we don't realize how bizarre it is.
It's completely normalized.
If you or I walked into a commercial bank right now and asked for an unsecured $80,000 loan with no job and no credit score,
We'd be laughed out of the building.
security would literally escort us out of the lobby. An 18-year-old legally cannot even rent a standard sedan for the weekend because insurance agencies consider them too much of a liability.
They cannot rent a car, but they can sign for a staggering amount of debt that will dictate the next 30 years of their financial lives.
Exactly. If a bank set up a booth and handed out massive, inescapable loans to unemployed teenagers in literally any other sector of the American economy, we would call it illegal, predatory lending.
The regulators would shut it down immediately.
Immediately. But in this context, because it's wrapped in the halo of education, we just call it admissions, and we smile and take pictures.
But to understand why the banks are willing to do this, like why they lend $80,000 to someone who can't rent a car, you have to look at the mechanics of underwriting.
Okay, break that down for us.
In a normal lending environment, the bank has to assess risk. If they lend to someone who can't pay back a personal loan, the bank takes a massive loss.
Right, which is why background checks and collateral exist in the first place.
Exactly. But in the student loan market, the risk has been entirely legally neutralized.
Ah, the welded door.
Precisely. The author highlights this as the masterstroke of the entire business model.
The master stroke.
Yeah. Through a series of legislative lobbying efforts over the last few decades, student debt became essentially the one financial obligation on planet Earth that you cannot discharge through bankruptcy.
And what's wild is that it wasn't always like this, right?
No, not at all. It was a gradual tightening. Decades ago, you could discharge student loans in bankruptcy just like credit card debt.
So what changed?
Well, slowly the rules were changed. First, it was restricted for the first few years after graduating, then it was extended. And finally, by the mid-2000s, the door was fully welded shut for almost all student loans, both federal and private.
Wow.
Yeah, unless you can prove an incredibly rare undue hardship, which is nearly legally impossible, that debt is with you for life.
That is genuinely profound when you step back and look at it.
Right.
Think about the safety nets society has built for almost every other catastrophic adult mistake.
Right.
Like, you can go to a casino, gamble away a literal fortune, and the courts have a legal bankruptcy process to forgive you and let you start over.
Yep.
You can start a small business, have it fail spectacularly, max out all your credit cards, and the system allows an exit. Medical bills, same thing.
But the student loan is completely insulated. The architects of the system built an emergency exit for every single financial misstep a human being can make. And then they permanently welded this one specific door shut.
Yeah.
The bank or the government takes zero risk, and the entire burden of that risk is shifted onto the shoulders of a teenager.
So, okay, we have a customer thoroughly convinced they need the product to survive. They are trapped in a financial arrangement they can never legally escape, which forces the ultimate question here.
Does the product actually work?
Right. Does it work?
Well, if we look at the data cited in the source, the numbers are pretty bleak. 52% of recent graduates are currently underemployed.
52%.
Yes, over half.
That's crazy.
If you look at the modern job market, you see people with master's degrees working as baristas or bachelor's degree holders doing basic administrative data entry.
Right.
More than half of the customers who bought this incredibly expensive product are working jobs that never actually require the degree they are currently paying off.
That's the statistic that blew my mind.
Right.
Because again, if we treat this like a physical product, like our car analogy from earlier,
Yeah, the car recall.
if a car failed to start 52% of the time, the company would be dismantled by consumer protection agencies.
Absolutely.
But when the college degree fails to deliver its promised career outcome for the majority of its customers, nobody blames the manufacturer.
No, society just shrugs and blames the wider economy. Or we blame the teenager for picking a major that wasn't, marketable enough.
Right. You shouldn't have studied art history.
Exactly. We rarely look at the institution that sold the degree and say, hey, your product has a 52% failure rate.
And honestly, why would the institution care? They already got paid.
Oh, long ago.
The university cashed the check from the lender the day the kid walked onto campus. They have absolutely zero financial skin in the game regarding whether that graduate actually gets a job that pays well enough to service the debt.
Which brings us to the final grim mechanic of the loop.
The billing.
Yeah. When you have millions of people holding inescapable debt for a product that didn't get them a high-paying job, the math inevitably breaks down. People default.
That's true.
And when they do, the system doesn't write off the loss like a normal business. They restart collections, they intercept tax returns, they garnish paychecks.
The product completely failed to deliver on its core promise, but the invoice is still due.
Forever.
Forever. So if we zoom out and look at this entire mechanism from above, let me just synthesize this.
Go for it.
You manufacture the demand through invisible ATS filters. You deny the requirement exists to get good PR. You finance the desperation of teenagers with zero underwriting because you successfully lobbied to outlaw bankruptcy. The product fails over half your customers, and when they stumble, you bill them anyway by reaching directly into their paychecks.
When you analyze it purely as a mechanical construct, it is practically indestructible.
It's a flawless loop.
It really is. Every potential vulnerability in the business model has been armor-plated by social pressure, corporate complicity, and federal law.
It sounds terrifyingly perfect. But here is where the research takes a massive pivot.
The twist.
Because for all of its flawless engineering, this pristine, multi-billion-dollar machine relies on exactly one foundational assumption. And if this assumption breaks, the whole thing comes crashing down.
The entire system rests on the assumption of scarcity.
Right. The unwritten rules, the $80,000 price tag, the welded door, none of it works unless knowledge is scarce.
It only works if the university is a gated fortress, and they are the only ones holding the key to the library. You have to pay their toll to get the knowledge.
But that foundation is evaporating as we speak.
Completely. The knowledge is no longer rare.
No.
The lectures, the textbooks, the raw data that they are charging a premium for, it is no longer locked behind that gate. The internet and the digital revolution completely decentralized information.
Yeah, it blew the doors off.
The university's core value proposition used to be, we are the only place you can learn this. Today, you can learn advanced statistics, coding, or supply chain logistics from your living room for absolutely free.
Somebody just printed 1 million keys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the sheer irony of the timing here is incredible.
Oh, the timing is amazing.
If you look at the historical timeline, the gatekeepers spent decades building this flawless scarcity trap. They secured the bankruptcy laws, they normalized the massive tuition hikes,
Yeah.
and they finished building the ultimate vault just in time for the exact decade in human history when knowledge fundamentally stopped being scarce.
It's like spending 50 years building a massive, heavily guarded vault to hoard water. And the very day you finish the vault, it starts raining everywhere, forever.
And you are still trying to charge people $80,000 for a single glass of water while they're literally standing in the pouring rain.
It's amazing. And I want to speak directly to you, the person listening to this deep dive right now.
Yeah, think about this.
You are exactly the kind of person who is proving this model obsolete.
Yeah.
The device in your pocket that you were using to listen to us contains more accessible, searchable knowledge than any gated academic institution in human history.
It's true.
You are learning complex systemic mechanics on a Tuesday morning, entirely bypassing the gatekeeper.
As a self-directed learner, you are actively participating in the new paradigm. Because once the monopoly on the underlying asset, the knowledge itself, is gone, the enforcement mechanisms eventually lose their power.
They have to.
They do. Corporate HR departments are slowly starting to realize that those ATS filters are actually working against them.
How so?
By requiring the degree, they are filtering out highly capable, driven people who simply chose to learn in the rain rather than paying for the vault.
Wow.
Alternative credentialing, portfolios, and direct skill assessments are beginning to crack the dam.
So we aren't looking at an indestructible fortress anymore. We have front row seats to a demolition.
We really do.
The gears are still turning, the machine is still garnishing wages and trapping 18-year-olds, but the floor underneath it has completely dropped out.
It is a really empowering reframing by the author. I mean, they took a trusted public institution, exposed the mechanics of a predatory scarcity trap, but ultimately showed us that the trap is finally losing its grip.
Yeah, the grip is slipping.
Understanding the mechanics of the game you are being asked to play is the very first step to deciding whether or not you actually want to play it. The tools for profound education are entirely democratized now. The only variable left is an individual's curiosity and drive.
Which leaves us with a fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling thought to chew on as we wrap up today.
So the final thought.
Yeah. We know the engine of this specific machine is failing because information is free. The university's monopoly on actual knowledge is broken.
Unquestionably broken.
But the corporate world still wants a way to filter applicants. They still want a bouncer at the nightclub door to make their hiring process easier and mitigate their own risk.
They always will.
So here is the question for you to mull over. If the 4-year degree is eventually abandoned because it is no longer the ultimate proxy for trust and capability, what happens to the monopoly on certification?
That's the million-dollar question.
What new, potentially even more restrictive, murky metric will the corporate world invent next to decide who gets to walk through the door?
That is the real frontier. The knowledge is free, but proving you have it might just become the next great business model.
Something to keep a very close eye on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the blueprints, keep feeding that curiosity, and we'll catch you next time.